I'm going to call this May 3rd, 2018 meeting for the Zoning Board of Adjustment to order. I will start with any public comment that is unrelated to the case before us today. Hearing none, I will move on. Next on the agenda, we have appointment of new alternates. Is Chris Jacobs here?
I haven't seen him.
No. Okay. We'll move that, maybe postpone that to the next meeting or the end of the meeting if he does come. Okay, next on the agenda is continued public rehearing of case 2017-7, special exception request from Article 3, Section 3.5, Table of Principal Uses C, campgrounds to expand Mighty Joe Campground, 111 Mighty Joe Road, Milton, low-density residential zone, Dan Flores, SFC Engineering Partnership, Inc., applicant 3 Ponds Resort, LLC owner. And where should we start? Would you please speak? This is our town attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The members of the board came here this evening anticipating continuing on with the deliberations that you had started the other night, the last time, in which you debated on discussed 3 out of the 5 standards necessary for a special exception, and did a thorough job and reached a decision on those 3, although it was a preliminary decision. It wasn't binding. Since then, in the last few weeks, I guess the communication was all by email. I received an email, as did Mr. Bolt, representing some of the abutters, from attorney Peter Malia, indicating that the applicant would like to amend its plan or its application and take a step backwards, basically. My words, not theirs. And without going into all the detail of what the amended plan or amended application proposed is, it basically, the most significant thing, at least to my impression, would eliminate the 39 sites proposed in the easterly point of the property, north of that entrance road.
Stop you for 1 minute. We need to get the Baker step down on this.
Oh, thank you. Point of order. Mr. Baker
Yes, I
needs
was
to
ready to
step down. Sorry, that's my fault.
How long did I last? 3 minutes? Typical meeting.
And we will, Andy will sit as our alternate today. Andy Rawson will sit as a voting member. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, please continue, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you for being alert. The board has a choice this evening. You do have the right to refuse to allow the amendment, force the applicant to go back and file a new application, but not only would the applicant have to start all over again, but that would mean the board members and the abutters would have to start all over again. And instead, what I recommend is that you allow the applicant to amend. What that will involve, however, is nothing further this evening, because there would have to be a further public hearing in order to allow the applicant to explain what these changes are, explain why it would make a change to what has change in impact or change on the standards that is of what has been discussed before, and you will have to allow the abutters to comment on, hypothetically, why they don't think there would be a lessening of impact. And of course, that has to be noticed, which means some other night.
So the third option would be for them to withdraw their application, correct?
Well, I think that would be withdraw and just give up.
Not give up, but withdraw without prejudice, and the fact that we got to start from scratch to begin with.
Yes.
So if I think it would be in everyone's best interest if they withdraw, and if we get to start from scratch, then we start from scratch.
Well, what I'm trying to do is present, I see your number 3 as part of number 1. I can see how it might be argued as different. I think the question before the board at this point is whether it will allow the applicant to amend, which I recommend, but I'm not the decision maker. You guys are. So that's the question before the board, and it should be decided before this meeting goes further.
Now, if we did decide to allow them to amend, would they have to re-notify all the butters?
Absolutely,
Okay.
including the regional impact
That's why I'm getting
notifications.
back to
Okay.
withdrawal.
But, so really, I mean, part of a withdrawal would force them to spend more money, basically to reapply, if they withdrew.
Well, they're going to spend the same amount.
Right, but
Because
as far as the,
No, they don't have to pay an application fee if we allow them to amend.
and the cost, but the cost, if you allow them to amend, the cost of re-notification will have to be paid by the applicant.
Certainly, no, I understand. So I think if I understand correctly, the end result, to me, sounds like it's similar to withdrawing. We're just not going to then go charge them a whole new application fee and then go set the date. I think we could set a date here based on our normal schedule. They have to re-notify, and we're in effectively that same place anyway. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I find myself thinking somewhat along Stan's lines, because I am concerned about still having 2 proposals in front of us, one of which...
Would you speak to the board members?
I'm sorry.
You're trying to do... I'd be glad to answer these questions, but I shouldn't be part of this debate.
Focus. Stan, we are in agreement. And my concern is we would still have the application of April 5th and the application of June X. And the applicant would be saying, this is what it was on April 5th, this is what we want to do on June X. I would much prefer to have, this is the application we want you to address, this is what we will do. Not how wonderful it is or how abysmally served our original intent.
Let me ask you a question. Do we have the authority to waive any fees?
We have.
Yeah. We do.
Because I like it cut and dry, like clean, not like Mr. Brown is stating. We're mixing apple pie with, peach cobbler. You got a lot of
Rhubarb.
A lot of remarks were made, and we're going to start all over again. And I think we should be clear what the new remarks are going to be on and what application it is. Maybe I'm being a little too specific on anything, but
Well, I mean, that is certainly up to the board. What do you folks think? Do you have thoughts or input on that?
Kind of along the same lines. We've spent many hours.
Louder. People can't
We've
hear
spent
you.
many hours already, on this. So I don't know if there's a way we can narrow that down a little bit, but I also don't want any extra fees incurred if there's a way we can avoid that.
I mean, we've gone this far. I personally, unfortunately, I don't agree with Stan. I think we should continue.
we do understand we can start from scratch again.
I mean, we will start with brand.
No, I understand.
We'll be starting with criteria 1 again, based on what is amended and what's presented before us. I think the end result is similar. But by allowing them to amend, I think we can move it along faster versus, I think we may find if we then say, okay, either they say, no, we don't want to withdraw, okay, then we're going to have to go through the rest of the criteria. If they say, okay, fine, we will, then we need to go through the application again, and I don't know that we can set a date certain for the next meeting, which could then push them out. I'm not sure about timing and all of that, whether they'd be able to be heard at our normal meeting in May or not. I don't know. I'm just, these are the concerns. I'm just thinking if we get this to the same place, my thought is allow the amendment.
Question. For the re-notification of the abutters,
Yeah.
that's a process which is specific to the time that we need for the applicant to do that for the amended application. So the costs of re-notification of the abutters for the amended is no different than the cost of a new application.
Agreed.
And if the cost of a new application is waived,
You're right. You folks have convinced me we can do it without there being a cost to them. My question is, can it happen in an expedient manner so that they could still be here on, what is that date, May 24th, May something?
that then the question would be, originally my application was A, B, C, and D. Now I'm changing the application, it's C, D, E, and F. Obviously, I have done the work for F. I don't see where there's any more time in presenting B, C, D, E as a new application, rather than adding to an old one. Because the engineering that they're doing is the same. And the presentation of the paper plan, the reconfiguration of any possible sewer, wells, buffers are all by formula.
Okay. All right. So, Dana, if the board votes to have them withdraw the application, reapply, is the timing such that they can be here if they choose to be? Yes, sir.
Let me just, one clarification. I think the vote of the board should be whether or not to allow them to amend.
Okay.
And then the next question is
So
up to
do
the
they
applicant,
wanna
whether
do
it
it?
wants to withdraw the application
Yep.
or, and with the intent of applying anew, or have the board go forward with a continuation of its deliberations
Okay. Thank you.
and see
Yep.
what happens.
Okay.
So, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay.
So the answer, Dana, is?
Is there time on the calendar that they would be able to, if they chose to reapply with a new application, with their new changes, for a regularly scheduled meeting on May 20, is it the 24th?
It would be the 24th. Well, to be honest, it would partly be depending on when they gave me everything, but zoning board requires 5 days for
Okay. And we're on
legal
the
notice, and there's
3rd
2
now,
weeks.
so, okay.
I think that there would be time.
Okay.
If I'm not
If it was
mistaken,
appropriately
the big
submitted.
time factor is the legal notices. It isn't the paperwork coming to the town, it's the legal notices. So they got to do
Understood.
that anyway.
Yes, I know.
So
Okay.
I just think it's a lot cleaner if it was to happen that way. They may choose not to do that, but I think it's a lot cleaner for the board, the town, and everyone.
Okay. So I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to not allow the amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, vote aye. Opposed? So that's
3-2.
3-2, and they are allowed to make an amendment.
How about if
Yes?
somebody makes a
Motion to do
positive
the
motion?
amendment, okay. So I'll take a motion to accept their amendment.
I move to accept the amendment and move forward.
Okay, so second. Okay, all in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, so that's 4-1. That they are allowed to make an amendment.
But I thought you had a first vote, 3-2, that there was not to be allowed an amendment.
No.
We did, apparently, on the second one, one of the members decided to vote in the affirmative. So, what just happened, basically, there's a motion was made to allow the applicant to make an amendment to the application that we were hearing before, and that has ultimately passed, allowing them to make an amendment. What that ultimately will mean is that they are going to now re-notify all abutters. They are going to submit what that plan is going to look like, so that that'll be public knowledge before the hearing, so that then abutters, other townsfolk, anyone with an interest in this will be able to come back and again speak, and we will start with criteria number 1, based on the plan as it sits, on providing the 24th all comes together on that, as if effectively, you know, it's going to be treated in much the same way as if it's all new information.
Is there a new regional impact study then?
As far as will we make a determination on whether or not that has regional impact as a board?
No, if with an amendment, since this already does have regional impact, it already went to Stafford County, right? That's how we got involved. Does the amendment now have to go through that whole entire process again?
You have to give notice.
What was
It's up to Stratford County.
As to whether they want to reassess based on the amended plan. But I would suggest that you notify them as butters, considering we would likely, based on history, consider that there could be a regional impact here. So.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, when you're saying they should re-notify everybody, it's actually coming through the town office, right? We're just being clear.
Whatever that normal process is,
And the one in charge
yes.
is actually saying yes. Dana's saying yes.
Yes, right. So we are going based on whatever that normal process would be.
Yeah, they'll make the butters list, but I'll mail it out.
Right, thank you.
May I have to make a comment?
I don't think we need to
Or
make
ask
this
a
comment now.
question? I have a question, point of order.
As a point of order, I'll take a question,
You
yes.
decide. Yes. It seems to me that there's another decision you need to make, or maybe be implicit in the decision you made. And that's a decision on whether or not to suspend the hearing on the first application.
No.
You see, that's an option that they didn't offer, but an option you could have exercised is to complete the decision on the first application. And then you don't even have to decide whether to allow a new application to be submitted. They can do that anytime. They can submit a new application, and then you consider the new application along the lines that you have guidance on.
Okay, thank you.
And to not complete a decision on this initial application, which has taken a tremendous amount of time and energy,
I'm aware.
is almost equivalent to threatening the integrity of the whole zoning appeals process. There would not be any finality to proceedings before this board, and you would be imposing a substantial burden on all of the people who have been here many times to try to persuade you to enforce the ordinance. So you could decide to hear and complete your decision on the original application, and then proceed with dealing with an amended application, should they submit one.
I believe that's what you've done, actually.
I think right.
Yes.
No, you have not made a decision on the original.
No, and if they were to, and so since we're all speaking in a sense hypotheticals here, if they were to instead come forward and say, okay, we'd like to withdraw that and we're going to reapply, we wouldn't be making a decision then either. So I don't know that I see a big difference there.
And that question is, do you permit them to withdraw?
Pardon?
The
Well, that
decision then is, do you permit them to withdraw? Not do you permit them to file an amendment.
Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 2 lawyers, 3 opinions, 3 lawyers, 4 opinions, 4 spokesmen, 5 opinions. I think the applicant may have had a sense that the tide was running out on the original application. My own interests, as I just wrote them down, are courtesy, timeliness, and good fact. And I want the application to focus on the parcel and the effects on the community. If the applicant, having reviewed his situation, has made that decision, The costs for the substantial costs of owning the parcel and operating the camp, they're looking at costs very similar on whatever basis they go forward. And I think the comments of the community are solid and substantial, and the points raised on our own decision are clear enough.
All right, so this board has voted to allow them to amend, and I think at this juncture that puts an end to this discussion at this point. And unless the board has anything else to say about that, okay, Andy, then now that section's done, and we can ask our new member, Mr. Baker, to come back up, and we'll move on with the next item on our agenda.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, sorry for the record, Chris.
That's okay.
Since we don't have the new application yet,
Correct.
we haven't set a new date technically, and there is a zoning deadline sheet that it has to be complied with. I trust that's being complied with, depending upon when the application comes in and the new notices.
Well, now they're not reapplying, so actually we need to set a date certain for the next, although they're re-notifying anyway.
Yeah, there'll be a re-notification. If I understood the conversation, what you're shooting for, if an updated abutters list is provided pretty soon,
Next week.
is the 24th.
Right. So I don't need a date here now.
No, because notices will be.
Because if the notices don't go out, if something happens, they don't send them, then we're not going to be able to meet that date anyway.
Right.
So, yes, that's the target of the 24th, but it comes down to if the applicant gets those notifications out accordingly,
But
and in time. Yes, sir.
if there is an amendment, they have to give amended documents.
Correct.
So that's really a new application, whatever you call it. You're giving them permission to do it rather than denying them.
Correct.
Or forcing them to withdraw. Whether that's right or wrong, we'll decide later. But I'm just trying to figure out from a standpoint of procedure, what are you going to get and when? It should be, my expectation, a new application changing all their text and whatever they're doing and their plan.
I would expect any text that they submit to reflect what their new plan is. And I mean, I personally, when I come sit down here, will look at it through the lenses of, this is new, I haven't heard this before. I mean, that's my expectation. When we look at those criteria, personally, I'll be making decisions on how I feel it fits within the criteria and the ordinances and all the things we need to meet based on what they are, in fact, giving and presenting, which you should all have access to prior to.
Right, that's our
coming in here.
expectation as well.
Yeah.
So it's one where I'm just, we're not the same matter being continued to a date certain. We're really a new application. You're allowing them to file a new application. Accordingly, they need to file it in accordance with whatever your rules are, and whether they time it for the 24th or the whenever.
Correct.
I wanted to be clear that
That's
we
how I
weren't
see
setting the 24th as the next date yet.
Not necessarily. I mean, ideally, yes, if people want to try to keep that in mind of when would it possibly happen, yes. But if they don't complete what they need to complete in that time frame, then no, it wouldn't be that time. Most
Thank you much for the clarification.
Okay.
Quick question, Judy Boucher, Townhouse Road. So does that mean that their project narrative, everything would end up being on the website once it's received? Is that how we would get the information? Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I come to the front and sit down, am I unable to comment on this issue?
Yes, you are unable to comment on this issue.
We can't comment anyway.
Nice
Right,
shirt.
no. But when the time comes that we hear this again, as a member of the public and as an abutter, when he steps down from here, he has as much voice here as any
Correct.
other
This
resident.
issue has come to a rest tonight. Done.
Correct. Now, we are going to be discussing minutes from the last one, so I think since you'll have to abstain from minutes anyway, then it really is, Andy should actually stay seated for this, since you're part of those minutes. Yeah, sorry. Did you read your minutes? All 13 pages of it? Okay. So, minutes. Discussion or approval of minutes for the April 5th, 2018 meeting.
Make a motion.
Well, I have a couple of questions.
Want to
What's
make a
that?
motion to accept
What
the
did you
changes
say?
for it?
I have a motion that, or I don't know if it needs a motion, but the first straw vote, it has Larry, just Larry's first name there instead of his initial and last name.
Oh. For consistency?
Yeah.
Okay.
Page 2 up at the top, when it lists, it says, is on a parcel of land being 225 acres. The existing campground occupies 45 acres containing 216 RV sites. Is that right? Accurate? Are there 215 RV sites on the existing site today?
To be honest, I would have to listen to it again to.
But 223 total? There was a couple of cabins?
Yeah, there's 7 cabins, but I didn't think that there were 216 RV sites.
It could be
I thought there were 200. That's what I was
campsites.
thinking. So I'm just wondering if that's, I'd like that to be accurate if we can,
Yeah.
when they are finally approved, what is that real number?
May I be paroled, Mr. Chairman?
I suppose.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you. So if you can just
I can,
clarify that
yep.
for accuracy,
Campsites
and I'll be
versus-
fine, yeah. And then the only item of substance that jumped out at me, and again, I just want to know if this is right, on page 11, it says, on the end of the first paragraph, let me know when you're ready for that.
Larry has them.
Okay. It says, at their other locations, do not have neighbors 800 feet from the property lines that do not complain about noise.
I'm sorry, Larry was on something else. Zach's comment?
Yes. At the other locations, so.
They
okay,
have-
does not understand the sound concern. At their other locations, do not have neighbors 800 feet from the property lines.
The do not should be removed.
They have neighbors 800
Because
feet.
he has other neighbors closer. He has neighbors at other sites that do not complain. So it got mixed up in
Okay, so if you can,
retyping.
I'll
Yeah,
be happy with
remove
that
first
language
do not.
corrected. Those were my substantive pieces. Anyone else? Oops, I can't hold on to that.
What do you have on page 13? S, add an S to motions.
That's it.
Anyone else?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes for April 5th, 2018 with changes.
Second.
All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Other business to come before this board? Yes.
I don't know how to say this, but.
State your name and address.
Little Shores Road, 11 in Maine.
Okay.
I just don't understand how they're building now.
We can't.
They've already got new cabins in Mighty Joe's. Did they get permission to do that?
This, we are not discussing that topic at this point. You can bring that up at the next public hearing related to this. We've already closed that portion.
So by then, there'll be 13 new cabins.
And I
That would be an
with the
issue
town
of the
code officer.
That would be an issue for the town code officer, code enforcement officer, if that is the case. So you want to, if you are alleging something like that, then contact the code
I see it.
enforcement officer. Then please contact the code
doesn't really have
enforcement
anything to do
officer,
with this
ma'am.
board.
Oh, okay, who's your code enforcement officer?
His name is Brian Boyers. Brian, right? Sorry, I know another Boyers. I get them confused.
It is.
Okay, so Brian Boyers would be the one contact. Yes.
Jen, Ray Jerome, 11 in May. How many, well, basically I consider this as another appeal. So this is appeal number 2. How many are the authorized for this project is my next question to the town.
So again, other business before this board is what we are discussing at this point. We're not talking about that applicant. We're not allowed to at this point. We have closed that piece of the business, sir.
Next on to do.
All right, any other business? Pardon me?
Will be on the business for tonight?
That's what I'm asking right now. Is there new business?
Anything not pertaining to Mighty Joe?
Thank Thank you. Okay. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposed?
Sure, I can give everything. Got my I's and T's.